I didn't hire you because you're smart, he said. I hired you because you remind me of someone I failed to protect. That was the third sentence my new boss ever said to me. The first two were, "You're late. Don't let it happen again." Standing there in my awkward heels, clutching a tablet I hadn't figured out how to unlock yet, I blinked up at Lucien Vale, the infamous CEO of Veyron Corporation. I'd heard rumors. He ran entire departments out of fear, could read through people like spreadsheets, and had never once been seen laughing. Now I understood why. Lucien Vale looked like someone God made on a deadline, sharp lines, dark hair slicked back like a villain in a fashion campaign, and eyes so pale they looked almost silver under the building's cold lights. His suit was perfect, his posture unshakable, and his presence suffocating. And yet he had hired me. I wasn't Ivy League. I didn't have family connections. I was just Naomi Wells, 24, nervous, and one missed subway away from crying in a restroom stall. "Follow me," he said, without waiting to see if I would. I did. The Veyron building was a steel and glass behemoth in the center of the city. It didn't hum with life. It thrummed with pressure. Every hallway gleamed like it had never been touched. Every surface looked designed for intimidation. No artwork, no warmth. Just mirrors, marble, and motion-censored lights that clicked on a half-second before I stepped forward. Like the building anticipated me. We passed people in sleek suits who barely glanced up. No one greeted Lucien. No one dared. His office was at the very top. Of course it was. We rode in silence in a private elevator that smelled like polished obsidian, and something faintly electric, like air before a storm. "You worked at a law firm before this," he said, still facing forward. "Yes," I answered. "Mason and Kent. 3 years. You lasted 3 years there." I swallowed. "Yes." He tilted his head slightly, and for a moment I thought he might turn and smile. He didn't. "Interesting." That was when I started to suspect this wasn't going to be a normal job. His office was a cathedral of glass and stone. No plants, no photos, no hint that a human being actually worked there, except for the bookshelves. They lined the wall behind his desk, old, heavy books with cracked spines and titles in languages I didn't recognize. Some didn't have titles at all, just symbols. He motioned to a small desk in the corner. "That's yours. Don't bring personal items. Don't decorate." I nodded. "There are 3 rules," he continued, taking his seat behind the monolithic black desk. "First, never enter this office unless I call you. Second, never answer my phone. Third, never touch anything on the shelves." A pause. I nodded again, unsure what to say. He studied me for a long beat. I could feel my heart trying to escape through my ribs. "You remind me of someone," he said then softly. My throat tightened. "I do? She had your eyes." He looked away. "And your bad habit of not knowing when to be afraid." That's when he said it. "I didn't hire you because you're smart. I hired you because you remind me of someone I failed to protect." I stared at him, stunned into silence. My fingers were clenched so tightly around the tablet that my knuckles ached. And yet, part of me didn't feel fear, not the kind I expected. There was something hollow in his voice. A grief too old to be recent. A ghost in his gaze, and for a second, just a second, he looked more lost than powerful. The moment passed. "Your tasks will come through your tablet," he said, like the previous exchange never happened. "Don't be late again." With that, he turned his chair toward the window and dismissed me with silence. I left his office with trembling knees and 1,000 questions. And as the elevator doors closed, I couldn't stop replaying his words. Who was she? And why did I feel like I already knew? On my second day at Veyron Corp, I made 3 mistakes before noon. I printed the wrong spreadsheet, forgot to bring Lucien his black coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, and called someone from sales by the wrong name in the elevator. She corrected me with a smile so tight I thought it might shatter. But the weirdest thing? None of those mistakes were the strangest part of my day. No, that came later, after the lights flickered. After Lucien handed me a task that shouldn't have existed. The main office floor of Veyron was sleek and cold, with that minimalist, high-tech perfection that made you feel like a fingerprint was a sin. The desks were matte black, the computers looked like military-grade tech, and everything was too quiet. Like the hum of human activity had been dialed down to 3%. I was setting up my corner when Tessa popped up beside me, all fire engine red lipstick and oversized earrings that absolutely broke the dress code. "You must be the newbie," she said, voice light. Naomi, right? I smiled nervously. Yeah, that's me. Tessa? She said, sticking out a hand. Her nails were glittery. Her handshake was firm. PR team, professional fire extinguisher, sometimes emotional support clown. I laughed before I could stop myself. She had the kind of energy that didn't belong in a place like this. Too loud, too bright, too alive. And yet, something about her smile was off. Not fake. Just too practiced. You'll get used to it, she said, nodding toward Lucen's door. Just breathe deeply and don't try to understand him. Logic doesn't work. That wasn't exactly comforting. Mid-morning, I got my first real assignment. Lucen called me into his office. No knock needed, his door always open just as I raised my hand, and slid a manila folder across the table. I need this document retrieved from archive room B12. I blinked. Sir, B12 isn't on the directory. I'm aware, he said simply. I hesitated. Should I? You'll find it, he said, like gravity. I left his office feeling like I'd been handed a treasure map and told to avoid the dragons. The archives were in the basement, predictably dim and unnecessarily massive. I wandered through aisle after aisle of dusty files and old machines that looked like they hadn't been touched since the Cold War. Eventually, I ran into a man sitting at a desk covered in ancient-looking ledgers. He wore a cardigan, glasses, and an expression like he'd already seen the end of the world and decided it wasn't that impressive. Mr. Mori? I guessed. He looked up slowly. His eyes were deep-set, calm, and too sharp. Yes? I'm looking for a file. Room B12? A pause. That room doesn't exist, he said. But my boss said. He tilted his head. Ah. That boss. There was something in his voice. Not fear. Not mockery. Recognition. Turn left past the microfilm section, he said finally. If the door opens for you, you're allowed in. If. He didn't answer. It did open. And inside I found exactly what Lucen asked for. A file that wasn't scanned, tagged, or digitized. Handwritten notes, ink faded with age. The pages smelled like smoke and something older. I didn't dare read it. When I returned it to Lucen, he didn't thank me. Just took the folder, nodded once, and returned to his screen. But something in his posture changed. The faintest softening. Like I'd passed a test I didn't know I was taking. That afternoon, he asked for coffee. From a place I'd never heard of. Moonlight Cafe, he said. Corner of Essex and Delancey. I checked my phone. That cafe had closed down 3 years ago. Is that a joke? I asked carefully. He just looked at me. Not smiling, not blinking. Did I sound like I was joking? I walked to the intersection out of pure curiosity. There was no cafe, just an empty lot. When I came back and told him it didn't exist, he said nothing for a long time. Then, strange. It used to. That night I dreamed of a cafe with violet wallpaper, jazz music, and a barista who had my face. Over the next few days, stranger things happened. Lights flickered when Lucen walked past. Printers jammed if he was nearby. My computer once typed out my grocery list before I touched the keyboard, a list I hadn't even written down yet. And worst of all, he knew things. Once, I was struggling to word an email. My cursor hovered over kind regards for a full minute. Then my phone buzzed. Just write it as you mean it, the text said. You're wasting time pretending. There was no name on the message. No number. Only one person could have sent it. One evening, I stayed late to organize the supply closet. My shoulders were stiff, my head pounding. I reached for a box on the top shelf and accidentally knocked over a desk lamp balanced precariously on the edge. It started to fall, and then it didn't. A hand caught it midair. Before it started to truly fall, Lucen stood behind me. His expression was unreadable, but his fingers were wrapped around the lamp with eerie ease, like he'd seen it fall before. You okay? He asked. I managed a nod, heart in my throat. How did you? Intuition, he said softly. Then he handed me the lamp and walked away without another word. By the time I left that night, the office was empty. The halls darker, the silence heavier. I looked at the ceiling lights, at the shadows stretching under the office doors. And for the first time since I'd arrived at Veyron, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Lucen Vale wasn't just mysterious. He wasn't just powerful. He was impossible. And somehow, I wasn't afraid. I was fascinated. Lucen's office was usually locked, not just metaphorically, like an unspoken rule or a sense of looming judgment, but literally. The door recognized only his fingerprint or his voice. At least, that's what I'd heard from Tessa, who once tried to drop off a report and got denied by the system like it was a jealous lover. So when I arrived one morning and found the door slightly ajar, I froze. There was no one inside, no light, just the shadowed silhouette of his desk, the towering bookshelves, and the scent of cold paper and electricity. I hesitated. He hadn't called for me. But there was a note on my desk, file retrieval, top shelf, left of the second cabinet. No signature, no seal, just those words. And the door, open like it was waiting. Inside, the room felt colder than usual, like it existed in a different temperature than the rest of the building. The blinds were half drawn, casting narrow slats of morning sun across the floor. The bookshelves stretched up to the ceiling, lined with tomes that looked like they belonged in a museum, not an office. I scanned the left side of the second cabinet. Nothing out of place, except for the case of glass I hadn't noticed before. It sat low, tucked in behind some volumes, framed in dark wood and sealed like an exhibit. Inside was a single, ancient-looking book bound in worn black leather, embossed with silver that shimmered oddly in the filtered light. There was no title, no author, just a symbol on the front, a circle with 4 intersecting lines, and a wax seal the color of ash. I bent down, unsure why I felt drawn to it. The case wasn't locked. My fingers hovered over the glass. "Don't touch anything on the shelves," he'd said. But this wasn't on the shelf, just behind it. I know how that sounds, like rationalizing theft. But something about the book, it didn't feel like it was waiting to be stolen. It felt like it was waiting to be remembered. I reached for the latch. It clicked softly, too easily. The front panel slid open, smooth as silk. The moment my fingertips brushed the book's surface, everything changed. A sudden pulse, like static through my arm. The silver seal flared with light, blinding, alive. It burned cold and hot at the same time. And then, total darkness. The lights in the office cut out with an audible pop. So did the hum of electronics, the distant click of printers, the murmur of the building's artificial breath. All of it, gone. I gasped and staggered back, my hand still tingling. Then I saw him, not Lucen as I knew him, not the composed CEO with his crisp suits and silver eyes. This was something else. He stood where the bookshelves ended, cloaked in darkness, or maybe made of it. His outline was still humanoid, tall, graceful, but wrong at the edges. Like reality bent around him. His eyes were no longer silver. They were burning, not with flames, but with something deeper, like coals holding centuries of heat. His skin looked like shadows spun into form, moving gently, like wind over water. And behind him, wings. Not angelic, not leathery either. Just there, a suggestion of shape that flickered when I blinked, like my mind couldn't decide what it was seeing. He didn't move, didn't speak. Neither did I. I was frozen, but not by fear. By something else. There was pain in him. Not the kind you could bandage. A soul-deep fracture. A loneliness so vast it had shape. And it was familiar. I don't know how long we stood there, the world between us silent. Seconds. Maybe. Years. Then his lips parted, and in a voice lower, older, and sadder than I'd ever heard, he whispered, "Not again." He stepped back, and the shadows swallowed him whole. The lights snapped on. I was on the floor, knees buckled beneath me, heart racing like I'd just run through a nightmare I couldn't remember. I scrambled to my feet, my hands shaking. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the empty space where he'd been. And for some reason I couldn't explain. My chest ached. Not from fear, from sorrow. The elevator ride down was a blur. No one asked why the lights had flickered. No one mentioned the outage. Maybe they didn't notice. Maybe it was just his office. Just me. When I returned to my desk, the note was gone. No one had seen it. Tessa raised a brow when I asked about it, but didn't press. I didn't see Lucen for the rest of the day. But I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. Those eyes, That voice. Not again. He wasn't afraid of me discovering his secret. He was afraid I would become it. The next morning, Lucen's office door was closed. Locked. Silent. No messages came through the tablet. No orders. No coffee run. Nothing. It was as if yesterday had never happened. As if the lights hadn't died. As if I hadn't seen him become something, someone else. But I hadn't imagined it. My fingertips still tingled where they'd touched that book. By late afternoon, my nerves were strung so tight I jumped when the elevator dinged behind me. I turned. It was him. Lucen stepped out slowly, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. His eyes landed on me. He didn't speak, but then, without a word, he nodded toward the elevator. An invitation. I followed. The elevator ascended in silence. Floor after floor passed by, then kept going. Higher than the top of the employee directory. Past the executive wing. To a button marked only. The doors opened to the roof. Wind rushed around us, catching my hair and coat, pulling at the tension between us like it wanted to unravel it. Lucen walked to the edge, looking out over the city's jagged lights. His back was impossibly straight. His hands, gloved, curled tightly at his sides. I waited. He didn't look at me when he spoke. I know you saw. And yet you didn't scream. My breath caught. I didn't know what I was seeing, I said quietly. Still don't. He finally turned. There was something strange in his expression. Not anger, not fear. Almost resignation. She screamed, he said. I blinked. Who? His eyes searched mine, as if trying to confirm something he already feared. She looked just like you. Her voice, her laugh, the way she always forgot to zip her coat when it rained. His voice was quieter now. Her name was Leora. The name hit something in me like a soft drum beat. She died, he added, almost to himself. Because I was late. Because I thought I could fight fate. Silence stretched. Are you saying, I'm her? His lips twisted, like he hated the question. Or hated that he'd considered it too. I don't know, he said. Maybe you're her. Maybe you're someone else entirely. Maybe you're the punishment for loving her at all. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My mouth had gone dry. My thoughts tangled. He stepped closer, and the wind stilled for a moment, as if the world held its breath with me. When you touched that seal, he murmured, something woke up. Not in me. In you. A chill moved through me. I've been dreaming. I didn't think they meant anything. They do, he said. Everything means something. He looked away again, his voice so quiet I almost didn't catch it. I don't want to lose you twice. Later, I found myself in the archive. The lights were low. Mr. Mori wasn't at his desk, or maybe he was watching from the shadows. I didn't ask. I wandered past the rows of forgotten knowledge, trailing my fingers across spines older than the city itself, unsure what I was looking for. Answers? A name? My own reflection? Eventually, I came to a shelf labeled only personal. A single drawer, unlocked. Inside was a photo. A woman. Dark curls, small mouth, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and smiled anyway. She looked like me, but not just like me. The smile curved the same way. The scar near the brow, faint but visible. Leora. I didn't know her. And I missed her. In the elevator on my way back up, Tessa joined me. Her lipstick was a little smeared, her ponytail a little looser than usual. She didn't say anything at first. Then, as the elevator began to climb, she spoke softly, without looking at me. Sometimes, it's better not to fall for someone you can't save. I turned sharply. What do you mean? She smiled, not her usual bright, perfect one. This smile was crooked, real, tired. Lucen's not what you think. He's not just a storm waiting to happen. He's the eye of something older. You sound like you've met people like him before. She didn't answer right away, just pulled back her sleeve. There, near her wrist, was a faint mark, a small sigil, inked in a shape I'd seen on the silver seal. You had a contract, I whispered. Have, she corrected softly. Not all debts are paid in this lifetime. I stared at her. Tessa winked, stepped off on the next floor, and disappeared into the hallway like she hadn't just shattered everything I thought I knew. Back at my desk, I stared at the blank screen of my tablet. Lucen hadn't messaged me since the rooftop. My reflection in the glass looked back at me with uncertain eyes. Maybe I was her. Maybe I was someone else entirely. But I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. He wasn't the only one who was remembering something. The first time I saw Aaron Singh, he was standing in the center of the executive lobby, smiling like he owned the place. Technically, he might have. He was one of the newest investors in Veyron Corp, a private backer with enough influence to bypass normal channels and walk straight into the boardroom. Tall, sharply dressed in a midnight blue suit, and with the kind of charm that made people want to follow him, Aaron looked like the kind of man who'd sell you your own secrets and have you thank him for the privilege. His eyes were warm. Too warm. Like the fire in a fireplace that's just a little too high, a little too close to your skin. He introduced himself at the morning briefing. "Pleasure to meet you all," he said, scanning the room. "I'm excited to be part of Veyron's next evolution." His gaze paused on me. Just for a second. But it landed. Like a mark. Afterward, as I returned to my desk, I found him already waiting. "Naomi Wells," he said smoothly. "You're the one who keeps Lucen from collapsing under his own workload." I gave a polite smile. I'd like to speak with you sometime. About your future here." My stomach tightened. "My future?" He smiled again. "Lucen's eye for talent is rare. You're underused. I think you could go far, if given the right push." There was something too quick about his interest. Too intentional. I'd been in the background for weeks. Now suddenly, someone powerful noticed me, immediately after I'd started dreaming in someone else's memories. The timing was wrong. Everything was. That afternoon, I passed by Lucen's office. His blinds were drawn, which never happened. From the gap between the slats, I could see him standing motionless by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Watching Aaron in the lobby below. He didn't look curious. He looked braced, like something was coming, and it had his name written all over it. Later that day, I went to the archive. I told myself it was to return a mislabeled document, but in truth, I needed to breathe. I needed the stillness of the rows and the smell of ancient paper, and Mr. Morey's strange, comforting presence. He was there, of course, as if he always had been. Reading something handwritten in a language I couldn't identify. "You feel it too," he said without looking up. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. "Yes," I admitted. He finally raised his eyes. "Beware of the ones who shine too brightly," he said. "They blind you to the ones who cast no reflection." I frowned. What does that mean? But he had already returned to his reading. Back upstairs, I ran into Tessa in the break room. She was making tea, her hands shaking slightly as she poured the water. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't meet my eyes. "Headache. Long day. Aaron said he wants to talk to me," I said carefully. Tessa's hand froze mid-pour. I watched a drop of hot water splash over the rim of her mug. She didn't react. "Oh," she said after a beat. "Of course he does. You know him?" "I've heard of him," she said too quickly. "People like him. They don't just invest in companies." Her fingers tightened around the cup. "They collect things." I wanted to press. I didn't. Because something in her posture warned me that if I did, something fragile might break. In her or in me. It happened at the end of the day. Most of the staff had gone home. The halls were quiet, humming softly under low lights. I was at my desk, gathering my bag, when a voice said, "Naomi." "Aaron." I turned. He was smiling again, calm and assured, like we were old friends. "I just wanted a quick word before I leave." "Of course." He stepped closer, too close. I instinctively took a half step back. He ignored it. "You're talented," he said. "And you're interesting. There's something different about you. Something I can't quite place." I forced a smile. "I get that a lot." He chuckled. Then he reached out and gently took my hand. His fingers were cool. Too cool. He leaned in, not threatening, not invasive, but intimate in a way that felt all wrong. "You've been marked before, haven't you?" he murmured. "I can smell the seal." The world tilted. I yanked my hand back. He didn't stop me, just smiled a little wider. "Be careful who you trust, Naomi." And then he turned and walked away, the echo of his shoes like teeth on tile. I stood there long after he left, heart pounding, hand tingling where he'd touched me. I didn't know how he knew, or what exactly he knew, But I was certain of one thing. Aaron Singh was not just a man, and he had come here looking for something, or someone, and somehow, he'd already decided it was me. I didn't plan to call my mother, but after Aaron's words echoed through me for the 100th time, "You've been marked before," I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind, someone who knew where I came from. So I sat cross-legged on my bed, staring at the city lights bleeding through my window, and pressed call. She picked up on the third ring. "Naomi?" Her voice sounded surprised. "It's late." "I know, I hesitated. "I needed to ask you something." A pause. "Is everything okay?" I almost said yes. Instead, "Did anything strange ever happen to me when I was a kid?" Silence. Too long. Then, carefully, "What kind of strange?" "I don't know," I said. "Something unexplainable. Maybe something you never talked about because you thought I wouldn't remember." Another pause. Then, "Why are you asking about this now?" I swallowed. "Because I think someone's looking for me, or something. And I need to know if there's a reason." Her voice, when it came back, was thinner. "This is about your job, isn't it?" "No," I lied. "Yes. Kind of." She sighed. A low, tired sound I hadn't heard since I was a teenager. "You always were too curious for your own good." That set something off in me. "Mom, I'm not a child anymore. If there's something I need to know." "You almost disappeared once." The words hit like a slap. I blinked. "What?" "You were 5. We were at the coast. You don't remember, do you? It was summer. You were playing in the tide pools near the rocks." I racked my memory. Nothing but flashes. Salt water. Wet sand. "You wandered too far," she continued. "We couldn't find you for hours. We thought you drowned. And then, you just showed up again. Dry. Not a scratch on you." A chill ran up my spine. Where was I? She hesitated. "You kept saying a woman had taken you, a lady with long black hair and silver eyes. You said she told you to be quiet, that he would get angry if he found out." I stopped breathing. "Silver eyes. I thought you were imagining it," my mother said. "Kids make things up." "But your father," he started asking questions. "About my sister." I froze. "What sister?" Another beat of silence. Then, "Leah." The name landed in my chest, like something heavy and ancient. "You had a sister?" I whispered. "I had a sister," she confirmed quietly. "She died when you were still a baby. Car accident." That's the story we told everyone. "But it's not the truth." "No," she said. "It's not." I waited, heart thudding. "Leah wasn't like the rest of us," my mother said. "She was always different. She'd talk to shadows, predict things before they happened. People said she was just imaginative, but your grandfather, he knew better. He said she was cursed." "Was she?" "She was gifted, and reckless. She fell in love with something she shouldn't have." The air in my room seemed to thin. Someone, she corrected. "A man who never aged, who only appeared when no one else was looking. He gave her power, or maybe she gave it to him. I don't know. But one day she vanished. Just gone. We found her body 2 days later in the woods." My throat tightened. "And no one investigated?" "There was no crime scene, no evidence, no wounds. But her face. Naomi, she died terrified." I shut my eyes. Leah, silver eyes, witch, woman, sacrifice. And she looked like me. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted you to have a normal life. That's why we moved, why we never let you near the coast again. I hoped, whatever it would forget you, but it didn't," I said softly. "No," my mother whispered. "It didn't." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind ran wild, chasing images I couldn't quite hold. A face I'd never seen. A voice I hadn't heard but somehow remembered. And always, Lucen, just out of reach. I finally drifted off sometime after 3 a.m., and I dreamed. There was water, warm, red, endless. I was lying on something cold. Stone? Earth? I couldn't tell. My dress clung to my skin. Torn. Heavy. I couldn't move. Above me stood a man with silver eyes. Lucen. But he wasn't looking at me. His eyes were closed. His hands were shaking. Blood, maybe mine, maybe someone else's, stained his sleeves. I was supposed to protect you, he whispered. I tried to speak, but my lips wouldn't move. He knelt, cradling my face in his hands. I tried. A tear slipped from his eye, landing on my cheek like ice. Then he stood and turned away. And the world crumbled into ash. I woke with a scream trapped in my throat, and my sheets soaked with sweat. The sun was rising, and I no longer doubted. I wasn't just a girl with a strange job and a cursed boss. I was part of something older, something that had been hunting my family for a long, long time. They say knowledge is power, but I was starting to learn that in this world, the world behind the polished glass of Veyron Corp, knowledge was also a weapon, and someone was getting ready to fire. The morning began with whispers, emails that vanished before you could reread them, staff who avoided eye contact, an emergency board meeting called without Lucen's knowledge, and with Aaron Singh's fingerprints all over it. I didn't need to see the agenda to know what it was about. Lucen. By noon, Tessa found me in the hallway outside the executive suite. Her eyes were darker than usual, her lipstick smeared at the corner. She looked like someone who'd seen the end of the world already, and was still trying to smile through it. He's going to expose him, she said quietly. Today, publicly, with proof. What proof? Documents, signatures, photos, security logs. I don't know how he got them, but they'll look real. Her voice cracked. He wants him erased, Naomi. I felt like I couldn't breathe. But why? I whispered. Tessa looked at me like I already knew the answer. Because Lucen broke the rules. He stayed too long. He got involved. He loved. I found Mr. Mori in the archives. He didn't look up when I entered, just slid a small cloth-bound book across the desk toward me. What is this? I asked. Protocol, he replied. Old rules. Before boardrooms and contracts. Before glass towers and illusion. I opened the book. The text shifted under my eyes like it was alive, symbols flickering between languages I didn't recognize and words I couldn't understand, until they suddenly made sense. Trial by Mark. Shield by blood. Voice by truth. If you speak in his defense, Mori said, you must be willing to bind your word to him. As protector. As witness. I looked up. What happens if I do? You stand between him and the hunter, he said simply. And what survives that, if anything, becomes legend. The boardroom was cold, not by temperature, but by tension. 12 chairs. 10 filled. Lucen's was empty. Aaron stood at the head, sleeves rolled, smile just a shade too sharp. This isn't a witch hunt, he began smoothly. This is a safety measure. A correction of oversight. He tapped a tablet. Screens lit up behind him. Images of Lucen caught at odd angles. Eyes too bright. Shadows bending unnaturally. One photo showed him mid-motion, arm extended toward a man who had frozen in place, like time had paused for everything but Lucen. Gasps circled the room. Aaron turned toward me. And our assistant here, Naomi Wells, can confirm. Can't you? All eyes swung to me. My legs were trembling. My fingers clenched the old book in my lap. I stood slowly. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger with every word. You're right. He's not like the rest of you. Murmurs. Aaron's smile tightened. He sees what others don't. He remembers what the world tries to forget. I took a breath. And he saved me. Again and again. Naomi? Aaron said warningly. I opened the book. A pulse echoed through the air. Deep, resonant. The lights dimmed. The walls hummed. I choose to protect the monster who saved me. The air cracked. Energy exploded in the room. A sharp, violet wave of pressure that knocked over chairs, shattered one of the screens, and made several people cry out. Aaron's expression twisted. No longer polished, no longer calm. His eyes glowed gold. Foolish girl, he hissed. You bound yourself to him? I did, I said. And I'm not sorry. Behind me, a presence. Lucen appeared, not from the hallway but from shadow itself. No suit, no mask, just him, cloaked in what he truly was. Not a beast, not a devil, but something older, grander, broken, and beautiful. He stepped between Aaron and me. No more games, he said. Aaron snarled and lunged. The room erupted in light and dark, a clash of forces that bent the edges of reality. Shadows writhed, light splintered. The boardroom ceiling cracked. I was thrown backward, caught midair by a barrier Lucen conjured without looking. They fought in silence. No shouting, no screams. Just raw, unfiltered power. Aaron burned like the sun. Lucen moved like the absence of time. And then, a shape collapsed. Aaron was gone. Dispersed. Dissolved. Banished. The room fell still. Lucen stood in the center, chest rising hard, eyes dimmed. His shoulders trembled. Blood, if that's what it was, streaked his temple. He turned to me. I broke the rules, he said hoarsely. They'll come for me next. I'll protect you. But he shook his head. No, not this time. He walked toward me, each step slower, heavier. And then, his seal began to glow. He pressed something into my hand. A silver ring. His ring. They'll erase me, he whispered. But not you. You'll remember, Lucen? He leaned forward, pressed his forehead to mine. I don't need power, he said. I just needed you to be safe. And then he was gone. Vanished. Not like a ghost, but like a truth being hidden by the world itself. In the silence that followed, I realized two things. First, Tessa was gone too. Her desk cleared. Her name removed from the system. Second, I was still holding the ring. And it was warm. 1 year later, the city didn't feel different, but I did. The elevator doors still dinged the same way every morning. The streets still groaned under the weight of 9 a.m. ambition. Coffee still tasted burnt by noon. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped walking like a shadow of someone else. Now I walked like someone who had chosen to stay. I was no longer Lucen's assistant. I was director of special operations, a role they invented just for me after the boardroom incident. No one could explain, but no one forgot. The official story was electrical failure. The real one lived only in me, and in a silver ring I wore on a chain around my neck. I touched it sometimes when I felt alone, not out of sadness, out of gratitude. Lucen had vanished from every database. No digital footprint, no trace. Even the building's security feeds glitched whenever I looked for him. Like reality itself had redacted him. But I remembered. He had made sure of that. It was a Thursday afternoon when I wandered into August Moon Cafe, a little corner spot with soft music, plants that weren't fake, and croissants that always sold out too early. I came here often, not just for the quiet, but because of the window. The corner table near the back had the best view of the sidewalk. People passed, paused, kept walking. I never knew what I was hoping to see, until I saw him. He stepped through the door like he'd always belonged there. No suit, no tie, just a dark coat and quiet confidence. I froze mid-sip. Same height, same walk, but not quite the same man. His eyes were still silver, but softer now, not glowing, not burning. His aura wasn't heavy, just present, alive. He saw me the moment I saw him. No surprise in his gaze, just something like relief. He ordered tea, sat down across from me like it hadn't been 372 days since he vanished. Hi, I said softly. Hi, he returned. We stared at each other for a beat. You look. I stopped. Tried again. You look here. He smiled. I am. I blinked. How? I gave up everything that kept me tethered to the in-between, he said. Power. Influence. Memory. But you remember me, I said, voice catching. His eyes warmed. I carved that part into the only thing I couldn't burn. I touched the ring under my blouse. So, what are you now? I asked. His answer came without hesitation. Free. We talked for over an hour. Not about demons or seals or ancient rules. About books. About cities we wanted to visit. About how the coffee here was better than most of the overpriced places downtown. He asked about Tessa. I told him I hadn't seen her since the day he disappeared. But sometimes I found traces. A flower on my desk that no one claimed. A post-it with a joke I hadn't written. He asked about Mr. Mori. I said the archive still existed, but now it was always locked. He didn't ask if I was okay. As we stood to leave, I hesitated. I don't know where you go from here, I said. Or what you are now, exactly. He tilted his head. Neither do I. I smiled. That doesn't scare you? It used to. He paused. But now, I'd rather not walk alone. And then, quietly, I'm not your boss anymore. But if you still have time, I'd like to walk beside you now. My heart didn't race. It steadied. I think I've been waiting for you to say that, I replied. We stepped out into the street. The sky was overcast, but the wind was warm. He offered his hand, not as a command, as a choice. And I took it. We didn't promise forever, just this. A new beginning. One where no one had to hide. One where the past was real, but no longer the cage. One where the monster didn't have to be saved, and the girl didn't need to be afraid of what she was.